you, Phyllis, for those remarks and also for setting the stage for what hopefully we can accomplish and start here over the next 2 days. And as she said, the time is up. The time is now to take action and to be resilient. So that brings us to our first panel discussion for today. So just so you know what to expect, there's going to be 2 panels and then a break. So the first one's going to be about a half hour, and then the second one is going to be about 45 minutes, and then there's going to be a break. So you can plan ahead. And this first panel discussion is called The New Majority Alliance and the New Business Model. So the New Majority Alliance, you're going to hear a lot about that today. Kind of sounds like Star Wars to me. Don't hate me, John. Doesn't it sound like the Rebel Alliance? Wasn't there a rebel? Okay. But we are not rebelling. We are about connecting, collaborating, and contributing. This is the New Majority Alliance. But these panelists are going to talk about what it really means and how and why the New Majority Alliance was formed, who the key participants are, and what the future holds. So with that, please welcome our co-moderators to the stage. Nellie Borrero, Managing Director, Global Inclusion and Diversity at Accenture, and Michael Chen. General Partner and CEO, Chen and Associates. And I'm also going to introduce the panelists for this one because they are also the co-chairs of this 2018 summit. So Mr. John Wang, Founder and President, Asian American Business Development Center; Ron Parker, President and CEO of the Executive Leadership Council; and Sid Wilson, President and CEO of the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility.
Thank you. So, Phyllis, thank you for that opening. I wrote down all 5 points, and I will be leveraging them. That was excellent. So I'm sitting here with a group of people. We've been meeting for quite some time in long meetings talking about the new majority, which for us is not about exclusion, it's about inclusion. It's really bringing an empowerment to ethnic groups within our country to really further empower our economy. So it is about including all across the board. So before we get started, I want to share some statistics that I thought would be helpful for us to sort of ground ourselves with. The Multicultural Report is suggesting that the buying power for African Americans will rise by $1.4 trillion in 2019. That's pretty significant. The Asian American will rise to $1 trillion by 2019, and the Hispanic buying power to $1.7 trillion. So this is the business case for the new majority. We are trying to create an environment where we take this power and really put it to work for our people across the country. So it was the brainchild of John, so thank you, John. I got a call from Ron Parker saying, would Accenture be interested in helping us in this journey? And I said, absolutely yes. So Michael and I are gonna sort of co-moderate this panel today. And it's been a lot of fun to be in this journey with all of you. So we're gonna get started immediately. And Ron, I'm gonna start with you because the first call I got was from you. So it's only fair I start with you now. Can you share with the audience what you feel the value proposition is of the new majority?
Okay, first of all, good morning. And let me just say also, thank you to JP Morgan Chase and to EOC member Valerie Rangford and all the members at JP Morgan Chase for hosting us, especially you, Phyllis. And I look forward to playing a lot more golf with you in the near future. But also to you, Nellie. That first call was made because Accenture has this unique process called design thinking. And knowing what John and Sid and myself have been talking about with this new majority, we felt that we needed some professional help to really get this thing framed up. But what it means is really the power of one, if I may steal a term from PepsiCo. It is taking our collective energies and efforts and really bringing the best of the best thinking, some of the best ideas and practices that corporations can use. So I view the new majority as the new diversity center of excellence as it relates to business transformation and long-term sustainable growth.
I love it. Sounds powerful, doesn't it? Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. For those that don't know me, I'm Michael Chen. And even though I have my own company now called Chen and Associates, I spent 25 years working in the corporate world at IBM, GE, and NBC News was my last stint there. And I'm going to act like a reporter and ask tough questions, all right? So
All right.
I've known John, Ron, and Sid for many, many years because over the last 20 years I've been active in the diverse organizations. I was head of the Asian American organization at GE. I also sat on Sodexo's advisory council. So the question I ask is, after spending 20 years, I've been a little bit frustrated that, like Phyllis Campbell said, that movement in the corporate boardrooms haven't moved, right? This has only been 7% corporate leaders, right? And the new majority, there's a census report that says in the year 2044, diverse people will be the new majority. So what do you think about the New Majority Alliance? How are we going to make things different so that we can actually change that statistic from 7% to something much closer to 50%?
Well, first, let me also thank JP Morgan Chase for having us here. And thank you, John, for your vision of this third annual Asian American Business Roundtable. And thank you, Michael. It's a very important question because when we look at where we are in terms of the number of people of color, Blacks, Latinos, Asian Pacifics, who are in the board and the C-suite, and then you compare that to where we are with our buying power. Because if we were looking, if anyone that was kind of calculating what Nellie was mentioning in terms of buying power, when you combine the Asian American, African American, and Latino buying power together, it's a little bit over $4 trillion or so, give or take. And for those of you that follow all of our world's global GDPs, that would make the New Majority Alliance the fourth largest economy in the world. Only Japan and China, and of course, through part of the U.S. that's not part of the New Majority, would be bigger. That makes us bigger than Germany, bigger than the UK, bigger than Mexico, bigger than India, bigger than Brazil, bigger than Canada. And so when we talk about how it's important for corporate America to recognize that before you think about the importance of globalization, we must think about diversity and inclusion here in the U.S. because we are larger than the global economy, and yet our representation on boards and in C-suites, the number of CEOs that are people of color has actually stayed either the same and even in some cases even gone down for some groups, and those are some things that absolutely need to be addressed. So having this New Majority Alliance, I think it sends the message not only to the nation, but also to global economies. I just got back from Davos over the weekend, and the number of people of color that were there was extremely low. In fact, there was only 20% of women that were there. So it was yet all of these attentions on economies, I think, need to include the new majority because we are the new normal.
Great. Phyllis?
That's excellent. So Phyllis shared earlier that when we stand together, we are stronger. So John, I'm going to go over to you because I'm sure there are many organizations sitting here today that are wondering, how do I get involved in supporting the new majority? What role can I play? Can you share a little bit about the operational model that we have in place and shed some light with the audience?
Sure. Thank you so much. And I think one of the toughest thing, I guess, for New Majority perhaps is how do we collaborate? It's not easy. I guess the three community with three different culture, background, history, coming together and working on a common goal. I think that's what we need to do is find a common goal that we can work together rather than individually, because that weakens us and doesn't bring our strength together. But by coming together, and I think this is something that we are learning how to work with one another. And not that we are very good at it, but I think at the beginning we have the the interest as well as the will that we wanted to collaborate with one another. And so part of the thing I think what we can do is really share what we are about and develop our common agenda, and then we can share that with different organizations and from our three diverse community. And then once we get the consensus from people, then we can act together and bring our strength and resource together to help to make changes.
And if I may, Nellie, just add to that, imagine those of you who reach out to organizations, and I spent 30 years at PepsiCo, and I must say, while each of the different groups bring their own value proposition to the table, I just don't have enough time in the day to meet with 30 different groups, all thinking and doing the same things. So you got it, Nellie, and Accenture got it when we made the call to say, why not create a construct that allows for insights, well, first of all, data, insights, and strategies to be built with the collective energies of all of us so that companies can come to a center of excellence that has all of this to create value and sustain growth. And you tell me what organization doesn't want to create value, what organization doesn't want to create long-term sustainable growth. So the new majority becomes that center of excellence that's going to allow us to some degree, put some of our biases and our own issues aside and embrace the bigger opportunity that exists for this emerging market, as Sid so eloquently described.
I'm going to stay with you, Ron, because we started this conversation about a year ago at the Asian American Business Summit in Las Vegas. And one of the things that we all talked about those challenges, if we start this new majority alliance, what about all those other diverse organizations that get their funding from these corporations? Are they going to be worried that, wait a second, now the new majority alliance is going to compete with us? They're going to take away our funding. They're going to have their own agenda that's not going to be exactly consistent with our agenda. How are we going to get, in order to be successful, as we talked about, we need to get all the diverse organizations supporting the new majority alliance and come together as one, not just this group here. So how are we going to convince all the other diverse organizations to say, be part of the new majority alliance? We're going to expand your vision, your focus, and leverage your support to achieve more versus we're competing against you guys?
Not an easy answer because we all have our own common interest. But I think we owe it to the next generation of leaders to reflect the type of leadership that's inclusive. I think our millennials will be making decisions on those organizations that can collaborate, that can connect, and commit to this new business opportunity. So it's going to require a lot of discipline. It's going to require some courageous leadership. But I must say, and we'll talk about this at the next session, that those companies who are part of the CEO Action, they've already gotten the idea that this can work. But at the same time, I think we need to put a very well-structured governance process in place. But it's like anything else. The sum of the parts is much greater together than individually. I have member companies in the EOC who are saying, who do I pick? Do I pick the EOC? Do I pick the Asian Business Network? Do I pick Inroads? Do I pick HACR? Do I pick Catalyst? I only have so much money to give to these efforts. Who wins and who loses? We think we can all win. We can all. This is a movement. And to Phyllis's point, the time is now.
Yeah, if I may add,
go ahead. Yeah, let me build on, I think, on what Ron mentioned, because we know that millennials are becoming an increasingly larger percentage of the workforce, and when you when you talk to millennials, they will tell you that they're much more multicultural because that's how they've grown up, and it is their expectation that that there be a new majority like kind of structure, because this is what they've been accustomed to, and I believe, if I'm correct, that by 2020 millennials will make up half our workforce, if my memory is correct on statistics. So this is going to happen, and this is an opportunity to lay the foundation now, so that the next generation of millennials and those after that will benefit from this.
Yes, I agree. I think that what's important, of course, is that we are not taking resources and away from the other organization. If anything, we hope we can add to it, and we want to act as a one. And then so when we develop a decision, hopefully that's a benefit to all three communities, and not as an individual community that will benefit at the expense of others. I think that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. It's sort of along the same lines, but it's very specific, this question. I have the feeling you're all going to want to answer it. But I'm going to start with Sid. How are we going to measure the success of the New Majority Alliance?
So you have to measure both based on tangible measurements, but also intangible measurements, because there are some intangible benefits that is hard to measure. For example, we have a great lineup of speakers today and tomorrow who all have busy schedules, but realizing that this is an opportunity to speak to a group of diverse leaders becomes increasingly important. And then those relationships that allow us to get access at those top levels, particularly when it comes time to help move the needle when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Those things are things that are intangibles. But at the same time, there are tangible areas that we can measure, whether it's what we're doing to move the needle for more people of color to be in top positions within corporate America, what is being done to improve procurement for businesses that are owned by people of color, what's being done to make sure that the philanthropy strategy in corporate America is targeted back into the community, particularly for those of us that are consumers of these very companies, and then what can we do to make sure that that corporate America is understanding that it's not about people of color assimilating to a corporate culture. It's how the corporate culture can acculturate to our community, because that is the key to talent retention. And I think that those are some things that can be done to be measured tangibly and intangibly.
Let me just follow up with a specific question for Ron and John. And Ron, in the corporate world, success doesn't happen without having metrics. Right. I believe we really need to have metrics. See, are we successful in our mission? What would be some of the specific metrics of defining success and achieving our goals? Would you set a target for percentage of diverse people in the boardroom? What are some of these metrics that we should be setting in order to see how well we're doing along the way?
I mean, Sid is absolutely right, Michael, is that you have to have, I know this from working with the Accenture group, being a process-oriented person, you have to have what you call P measures and R measures, process measures and results. So to speak specifically to your question, we would start at the top, and we would like to see, for example, is something that Steve Howell from EY and the steering committee of the CEO action plan that we're working with Tim Ryan on, is that we're starting at the top. And this top being, we would like to see each one of the 300 companies who have signed on to the CEO action have a woman or a person of color on their board of directors by a certain date. Let's just say 2020, okay? We got a lot of work to do based upon what Phyllis said, okay, and the representation. So by 2020, we want X number on the board. Another metric would be we'd want to have a direct report to the CEO who is a person of color or female by 2020, okay? Because there's a reciprocal exchange of knowledge and learning and insights that you gain by having someone on your board who doesn't look like all of the, 85% of the board members who make up corporations today, and on your executive team. To Sid's point, we would like to have that same group of companies commit to spending X number of dollars by 2020. And again, the steering committee has to agree to all this, so I'm putting this out there before they even know about it. So, but you guys give me credit if you adopt it, all right? We won't say anything, right, Nellie? But to be in the billion-dollar roundtable of minority spending with women and minority suppliers by 2020. So, Michael, to your point, businesses look at the value chain and they look at their strategies. And let me say this, diversity and inclusion is a business strategy and a business opportunity. It is not a nice to do. It is also not just good corporate, global social responsibility. To what the numbers indicated that you indicated, Nellie, it's about sustained business growth. Those who lean in, Michael, will be winners. Those who don't, I would hate to be on the board.
I think that's
you.
important is that we will work on two ends. One is on the corporate side. We will convey the message to the corporate directors, CEOs, the importance of working with the community. On the other hand, I think it's important for the new majority to educate our own community about the importance of the strength that we are developing as over $4 trillion of spending power. How can we use that to better improve our own community and to encourage the corporation to support community economic development so that a stronger community that can be a stronger, better customer for corporation. I think that's, we want to work on both ends to able to achieve this new majority goal.
Good. So, whenever you're going to start something this big and this type of movement, there are challenges that come up. There are some barriers that show up. For those in the audience that are thinking about the possibility of joining this movement, what are some of the challenges and barriers that you think have come up, and how have we been able to sort of diffuse those?
I would say it's almost like when you're launching a new organization, you want to know who are your angel investors. Mm-hmm. You have to make some tough choices. And I think the way John and Michael and you, Nellie and Sid and I have talked about this is that we will have a process for reaching out to those interested parties to join us. That will be our angel group. Mm-hmm. That angel group will get the right of that talent, wherever it may be on the value chain of the different things that we are currently involved in. For you, Nellie, it may be, I would like to get more insights around what's going to require more Latinas to get to the top of my organization. Mm-hmm. Well, we will naturally then support and lean in and support Sid with those insights as to what are the barriers that's keeping Latinas from getting to the top suite. Steve may say, Ron, I need more blacks in my middle management ranks. Well, then we work with our strategic partners like Inroads and Lead to say we need to help Steve at EY to get more blacks into the middle management pipeline. Same thing for the other groups. So we will have a very disciplined process that will allow us to enter. We will have also strategic advisors, people that we partner with to gain insights, to gain research information, because what we've learned from the Alliance for Board Diversity that Sid, LEAP, Catalyst, and the EOC is in part of, working with other strategic partners, we are much better when we understand other cultures, not just our own.
Let me just follow up with that, and Sid and John, feel free to chime in as well. We had talked about in our meetings that in order to change the diversity landscape in America, we got to change the leadership, right? And the leadership of the corporate world is the boardroom. But we also talk about the 4 pillars of the stool, right? You got to change the leadership in government because government makes policies. Government, directs where the money goes. The third leg of the stool is got to change leadership in media because all of us see what we hear through the media, whether it's TV, radio, social media. If we don't have leaders in media kind of changing the narrative, that won't help us change diversity and inclusion in America. And the fourth pillar is nonprofit. Nonprofit we talked about, not only charitable organizations, but academia, how they teach and what they teach about history. And is it just history about Caucasian America, or is it history about diverse America? So how are we going to go reach out to the other 3 legs of the stool, to media, to nonprofit, and including academia, and as well as to politics and government?
I think part of the thing is that certainly the new majority, as we are putting our governance together, and to reach out to the other sector, that's important. I think that to work with the government, work with media, working with other nonprofit organizations are some of the key for our success. Unless we have their support and input, and then we are not going to be able to be successful in dealing with the corporate world. I think that's the key, that we have to really be aware that our constituents and our partners in the community that we need to work with.
Let me add a little bit to what John just mentioned is that, and also to address the question about government and the media, is that when you think about how in a capitalistic economy that we're in, that The economy moves based on what's happening in the private sector. And when you see the private sector move in a direction, in particular, when you have leaders, people of color that are in these high-ranking corporate positions, then it starts to trickle over into other areas of the economy, whether it's the government, whether it's in the media. It's my opinion, this is just my opinion, that when you look at what happened in Charlottesville over the summertime, and you saw the reaction of corporate America, where virtually it was unanimous denouncements of what took place in Charlottesville. If you ask me, would that have happened so broadly 20 years ago? I'm going to say I don't know that corporate America would have had the courage to have come out that strongly 20 years ago. But now today, because you have more people of color in corporate America, particularly more that are, and again, we're still not there yet in terms of our numbers, but the importance of addressing and embracing diversity and inclusion and engagement, and then seeing an example of what happened in Charlottesville was why I was so proud when I saw so many companies come out strongly in support of diversity and inclusion, and then even now with the issue of DACA, where so many companies have come out and said that DACA recipients are good for America, they are as American as you and me, and then that starts to influence the media and in government. And I think that again reiterates why it's so important to have such a movement.
And if I may add to this, I didn't get the pleasure of going to Davos this year, so just throw it in there in case someone wants to sponsor me.
Sid has a lot of pictures he can share.
Okay. But I know it was 3 years ago, and we were talking about this as a group, as a collective group. And I think there are several thousand CEOs who attend that, and they deal with big, bold, global issues. The number one issue coming out of Davos about 3 years ago was for corporations asking the question, do I have the talent within my organization to deal with the complexity of business issues as we get deeper into the 21st century? That was the number one question. Because at the end of the day, if you do not have the talent, the intellectual capital within your organizations, yes, AI is another opportunity for us, but it's going to require people to load in the systems and the algorithms to create artificial intelligence. And if you don't have that kind of talent, as you look out and do your workforce planning, then you're in trouble. And to Sid's point, the next generation of talent is going to demand that corporations reflect an inclusive environment. Otherwise, they will vote with their mobile devices. We do not own our brands anymore. The social media space owns that. And how we interact with our customers, but more importantly, how we interact with our employees will determine our long-term success.
It's excellent. I would tell you that the volume of inclusion, diversity, equality, equity, parity, belonging, we call it many different things now, and that's great, but the volume has gone up significantly globally. So every organization, I think, is focused. Some are more mature in the journey than others, but we need to catch up because you're absolutely spot on, right? We don't own our brands anymore. Social media does, and Sid, to your point, that memorandum that went across many organizations after Charlottesville will have not happened 20 years ago. So we're evolving. So John, over to you with a really good question here, so get ready. What are the key next steps for this alliance?
I think we need to really go back to also connecting with our community. I think it's important as we are working with the corporation, but without the corporation realize this 4.1 trillion market that's out there, that's important to their own success and survival. And then, the new majority would be difficult, would be hard to make progress. So I think we need to work with the community, educate the community, and for them to understand that they can really use their purchasing power to advance their community's economic development. At the same time, I guess that we on the front line of working with the corporation, that we can helping the corporation to further develop a new model of inclusion and diversity. And I think Phyllis had mentioned earlier that the mentorship is important, and perhaps a cross-cultural mentorship program. This is something the new majority can work together and develop a new generation of corporate leader that will help to propel the corporation to the next level.
So just following up on that, I like to watch movies, and one of the movies I loved to watch back then was called Forrest Gump, right? Forrest Gump was very talented, could do lots of things. And a part of the movie, Forrest Gump decided to run. And he ran by himself. But as you see through his journey, people stopped dropping what they're doing and started running with him and started following him and taking this journey. All of a sudden, it became a movement. I see this as the same thing. We're just starting to run now. This small little group in this conference room here at J.P. Morgan Chase. How do we start a movement so we get individuals, diverse organizations start running with us, dropping what they're doing? Like you said, a lot of people have their day jobs. How do we get people to start running? And more importantly, how do we get corporations, the government, and media to start running on this journey with us? Which will take some time, but we got to start somewhere. So, Ron?
Well, I would end with it requires courageous leadership up and down the organization. Going back to your movies, on Thursday I'll be giving a Black History Month speech at Southwest Airlines, and because it's an aviation sector, I'm going to show them some clips from Hidden Figures. For those of you, how many hands? How many people? There's a scene in the movie where there's a large, important meeting that's going on, and Kevin Costner doesn't have the answer, and he looks to his male assistant saying, I need to know the answers, and one of the characters in the movie basically insisted, black female, she said, I need to be in that meeting. And this resistance of this mid-manager leader basically says, no women, and he didn't say it, but it was pretty much understood. Definitely no black women need to be up in this meeting. And he said, last I checked, who was the leader? And that's what she told him. She said, last I checked, you're the leader, you make the call. So this is going to require courageous leadership. This is going to require leaders at the top, Nellie, who are willing to engage in a different business model that's going to have different outcomes.
Excellent. Well, that concludes, sorry, Sid.
Yeah, I'll be real quick
Yeah.
because I know time's up. But just building on this, just think about this as a corporate diversity and inclusion equivalent of what happened in Alabama when you marched for Selma to Montgomery, or if you were like Cesar Chavez, who marched from Delano to Sacramento, and it's all the common denominator is moving forward. And as you move forward, you start building that momentum. And as the momentum grows, we know the toughest part of doing anything that's momentous is that first push. Mm-hmm. But once the wheels start turning, all of a sudden things start to move.
Excellent. Well, it's been an honor for me to be part of that first push. So it's been great working with all of you. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you all for being part of this conference today.
Thank you.